During the 1960s, Bob Crane was living the dream of any actor. With his radiant smile and quick repartee, he charmed viewers playing Colonel Robert Hogan, the witty commander of the popular sitcom Hogan's Heroes. To millions of viewers, he was the quick-witted, handsome officer who always seemed to have a scheme cooking, who defused bleak situations with his wisecracking humor, and who fired off punchlines with suave ease. Offstage, he was just as charismatic, with his crisp wit, relaxed kindness, and affable nature that appealed to those who found themselves in his presence. He was a friend who could illuminate a room with his smile or a sarcastic remark. But in private, Crane's own life was not so sparkly as the public perceived. As fans giggled at his on-screen antics, his actual life was disintegrating in ways that would ultimately dwarf his success. What had started as a shimmering career founded on charm and laughter would, over the course of time, be ravaged by scandal, deceit, and ultimately a violent and untimely death that remained more questions than answers and haunted Hollywood for decades. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Crane's coming into fame did not start with television, but with the radio. Before he was Colonel Hogan, he was famous all over Los Angeles as the one and only master of the airwaves. His title of the Man of 1,000 Voices made him already a celebrity in the area as he anchored a popular morning program on KNX radio. His improvisational skill, unparalleled wordplay, and innate self-assurance enabled him to trade witty remarks with superstars with ease. Celebrities like Marilyn Monroe, Bob Hope, and Charlton Heston were enchanted by his humor, while the listeners felt as if they were privy to confidential conversations with the stars. Even Walt Disney himself was said to have referred to him as the fastest wit in the West. In a business where timing is everything and charisma is a must, Crane possessed both in spades. His success on radio inevitably bred opportunities for television, and it wasn't long before Hollywood called. In 1961, still establishing himself on radio, Crane opened his program to legendary television writer Carl Reiner. The encounter became an unplanned opportunity when Reiner offered him a guest spot later on The Dick Van Dyke Show as a philandering husband. The minor role proved to be the turning point, leading the way to new doors and changing the direction of his career from radio broadcasts to TV screens throughout America. Crane soon found himself in a recurring role as a cheerful dentist on The Donna Reed Show, where his own sense of comedic timing and clean-cut charm captured audiences and producers alike. But it was 1965 when his life irrevocably changed. That year, Crane's agent showed him a script for a new show called Hogan's Heroes. Initially, Crane misinterpreted it as a war film. Actually, it was a World War II set sitcom about a German POW camp, a concept that seemed strange, even off-color to many. But when Crane took over playing Colonel Hogan, the suave, wry, and ingenious leader of Allied POWs, always staying one step ahead of their hapless captors, viewers were instantly enthralled. Despite all predictions to the contrary, Hogan's Heroes was a huge hit. The series was on the air for 6 years, from 1965 to 1971, and made Crane one of television's hottest stars. He received 2 Emmy nominations, and his face was plastered on billboards, lunchboxes, and magazines nationwide. He was a household name, and people revered him for playing the type of hero who never sweated during intense situations, a man who always had an answer at hand. But beneath that flawless facade, things started cracking. Even at the pinnacle of his popularity, all around him realized that Crane's private life was getting tighter and tighter. His taste for adventure was increasing, and off-camera he was behaving in a way that suggested greater compulsions. But to everyone, at least for the time being, the world continued to witness only guffaws and charm. No one could notice the birth of a double life. By the mid-1960s, Crane's interest in photography was gradually becoming more personal, even disturbing. Initially, he was just playing around with cameras, taking portraits, and testing out new video gear. But over time, the pastime became an addiction. His meeting with John Henry Carpenter, a Sony video equipment salesman, was the tipping point. Carpenter, who was plugged into the Hollywood scene, not only delivered Crane the new gadgets, but was also his constant buddy. They traveled together, hit nightclubs and bars, and used Crane's fame to attract women into their lives. Carpenter would assist in setting up recording gear, and the next thing Crane knew, filming sexually explicit encounters became a staple of his personal life. This new lifestyle came at a price. Crane's attention turned away from his professional life, and co-workers observed his growing distraction. What had started out as a successful path in Hollywood started to falter. His first marriage with his high school sweetheart and Tertian, whom he had 3 children with, dissolved after more than 2 decades. The pressure of his hidden vices and the increasing fixation on taping drained heavily on the couple. He subsequently wed Patricia Olson, more famous among Hogan's Heroes fans as actress Sigrid Valdis, but the same problems continued. Even on professional sets, like when working on Disney's wholesome 1973 film Superdad, Crane's on-set behavior was a concern to executives. His reputation was starting to tarnish, and rumors about his personal life flowed quietly through Hollywood. By the late 1970s, Crane was no longer the TV star he once was. Although still a household name, the roles that had once come easily dried up. He turned more toward stage productions, working steadily in dinner theaters and regional plays. In public, he was intent upon remaking his life and career, but in private he told friends that he wanted to move on, leave Carpenter behind, and start fresh. Alas, he would never have the opportunity. In June of 1978, Crane was in Scottsdale, Arizona, acting in a stage comedy titled Beginner's Luck at the Windmill Dinner Theater. Only 2 weeks short of his 50th birthday, he seemed set to change. Friends remembered him talking of divorcing Patricia and breaking with Carpenter. He yearned for a new beginning. But on June 29th, disaster was to strike. Having failed to meet her for lunch, his co-star Victoria Barry had gone to visit him at his apartment. She entered to find Crane dead in bed, brutally beaten. His wounds were serious, and his detectives thought the killer could have used a camera tripod as the weapon. There was an electrical cord beside him, but it was not what killed him. What confounded investigators was that there was so little disruption. Nothing was taken, and there was no indication of forced entry. His killer was either someone Crane trusted to come in, or someone who crept in while he was sleeping. Suspicion fast accrued towards John Carpenter. He had arrived in Phoenix only a few days before, and was found with Crane the evening of his death. There were reports that they had even listened to some of their tapes together. Carpenter said he departed afterwards for his motel, but witnesses later disputed his schedule. To add to the suspicion, his rental car had smears of blood that were of Crane's type. But in 1978, DNA analysis had not yet been invented, and blood typing alone was not enough to establish guilt. Without an identifiable weapon and a muddled crime scene, prosecutors refused to bring charges. The case stalled, hanging in the margins of Hollywood's collective unconscious. For more than a decade, the question of who murdered Bob Crane went unanswered. Then, in 1990, detectives reopened the case, hoping that improvements in DNA technology would shed light. They found old photos of the interior of Carpenter's car that seemed to contain biological material. Although most of the initial evidence had been destroyed, prosecutors decided to go ahead with charges. John Carpenter was arrested in 1992 and, in 1994, tried for the murder of Crane. The courtroom intrigue held public fascination. Prosecutors depicted Carpenter as a scorned friend, upset about Crane's decision to sever their relationship. They laid out blood evidence, the word of Crane's son Scotty, and the past between the two men. The defense offered the mishandled evidence, the lost DNA samples, and the potential for alternative suspects. After weeks of hearing testimony, the jury acquitted Carpenter. He maintained his innocence until his death in 1998, and officially the case returned to the cold files. Peace eluded Crane's family as well. His children spoke of the anguish of seeing their father's life condensed into tawdry front pages and evidentiary hearings. Rather than his decades of service as an innovating radio personality and Emmy Award-nominated thespian, The press fixated on the lurid details of his personal life. To them, he was less a pioneering performer and more of a fallen star. Even Hollywood stepped back, though his 1978 funeral attracted about 200 mourners, including celebrities such as Patty Duke and Carol O'Connor. Reruns of Hogan's Heroes dropped, and Crane's name was hardly celebrated. His children grappled with the legacy that was left behind, resisting productions such as the 2002 autofocus, which portrayed Crane in a lurid and sensationalized manner. Scotty, his son, even launched a website to come to his father's defense, claiming the media improperly manipulated the news. In subsequent years, there were new attempts at re-examining the evidence. In